retrieving those homes has been really difficult, but Coffee Park has done an excellent job in rebuilding. But a lot of homeless individuals lost their housing because of the fires and now COVID-19, another major trauma that we're experiencing. And yes, there is a eviction moratorium, and thank you to the current administration for recognizing a lot of what we need with the vaccines and with monies to help people stay in housing, because it's one of the ways to cut down on the spread of COVID. And at the same time, people have been really challenged in getting housing. The program that I work for, Interfaith Shelter Network, is a housing program, is a program that provides a variety of resources to a variety of populations. And I was in a staff meeting yesterday, and the beauty of it is that our program was housing individuals, helping them get into housing uh, through the pandemic. So we're still doing the work. It's just harder to do. Um, Systemic racism, we have to talk about that. We have to talk about looking at housing justice and how is it being enacted. We have programs like Legal Aid. We have North Bay Organizing who do amazing work. We have Homeless Action. We have churches that are involved in trying to make a difference in this community. And we have just individuals who have become more sensitive to the issue of homelessness, more open to provide some kind of housing for people who are in need or are low income, or mothers with children, or women fleeing domestic violence. So there is an awakening. There is acts of kindness. There is people like Adrian, people like myself, people like the folks who are here today, that there's some movement, but it's really still changing people's minds, changing people's hearts. And if that doesn't work, several of the organizations, many of the organizations now, they have a legal arm of their organization. Because if people are discriminating against a transgendered individual who is in a position to get housing, then we have fair housing, and we have attorneys who are working with agencies to try to open that door. Um, I think I'm gonna just pass it on to Adrian, and we look forward to more discourse and engagement with the individuals who are here. And thank you so much for being here today.
Wow, thank you, Celeste. You said a lot, and it's always a privilege to spend time with Celeste on any level. And thank everybody here that's come. Um, I'm a homeless activist. I work in Sonoma County with Homeless Action. We have a weekly meeting every Monday morning where we try to do something to help the situation for homeless people. And Saves is working to build tiny villages for homeless people. So I might have a chance to talk a little more about that. But I'm here really because that's my passion. I believe that homeless that everyone has a right to a home.
Yes.
We live in the most wealthy country in the world, and one of the most wealthy counties, and it's just shameful that there is anyone without a place to stay at night. Um, if we were in if we were in a classroom, I'd say raise your hand if you know someone who's homeless, if you've been homeless, if you're at risk for homelessness. And my experience has been with that 60 to 80% of the people in whatever room I'm in will raise their hands. And I say that because often we think of these issues as kind of out there, something that an activist like Adrian or Celeste is working on. But actually, they're very integrated in our community. They're integrated in our lives, and they affect all of us. And then I would say, and I ask you now, why are people homeless? And so take a deep breath and think, what do you know about? What's your first thought? And then I'll give you the activist answer to that question, which is people are homeless because they don't have a home. And the reason we say that is because whatever problems people have that caused them to do that final drop where they couldn't get back into a house, those problems are usually not solved while they're homeless. They need to be back in a home, and then they can start working on whatever their issues are. Now, some of you, I'm looking, see some gray hair. You remember when there was this thing called trickle down economics, and it was very popular. We'll just give money to the rich people and the people who own things. It will trickle down to the lower class, poor people. Everyone will benefit. Well, it didn't work, in case you wonder. But I believe in trickle up economics. So I believe when we talk about housing justice, we have to talk about housing the people who are most in need of housing and most at risk of losing housing. So that's poor people, that's Black and brown people, queer people, disabled people, and homeless people. And I believe if we take care of those needs, we will put a foundation under our community. And frankly, the cost of housing will go down for all of us who are in that middle range of needing housing. In terms of Sonoma County, this is what I know best. We have about 3,000, give or take a couple hundred, who are homeless now, currently, every night. 1,000 of them are housed in some kind of way, transitional way. So like Interfaith Shelter Network that Celeste works for actually helps people get into some housing and then gives them some support to stay there. It's not permanent. It's still, they're considered homeless, but they have a place to be at night. The other 2,000 do not, and they are functionally illegal in our community. There's no legal place they can go at night to sleep. If they're on private property, they're trespassing. If they're on public property, if they're on sidewalk or the parks, there's a variety of laws that we call criminalization laws. You're camping, you're cooking, you're polluting the water, you're a health hazard. But in short, there's various ways to kick you out of wherever it is you are. So searching for a place that is safe to just even to sleep, much less to live during the day, is hard. And of that 2,000 people, some of them are newly homeless. They have a car, they have their clothes from their last job, they're able to sleep in someone's driveway that they knew from before. And they tend to get out of homelessness fairly quickly. They put something together. But the rest of them, and this is, I think, the majority of people, become chronically homeless. And that, I think, is defined by about 2 years of homelessness. So
Long.
they have, is that right?
2+.
2
Mhm,
plus.
mhm.
So they have
It's
generally
the
they've
HUD
lost.
definition of homelessness. Look.
There you go.
Mhm.
So they've lost everything. They lose their family, their friends, their bank account, their car, their winter jacket. One day the policeman came and said, you have to move fast. They grabbed all their stuff and they lost their ID. And so most of these folks have lost everything. And not just once, but sometimes multiple times. So they are extremely vulnerable people. And what they tend to do, like anyone does, they look for friends. And there is a homeless community where people know each other. So they tend to want to buddy up. You know, you come sleep next to me. We'll watch out for each other's back. Tomorrow you can watch my dog while I go to the grocery store. That kind of thing happens. And once 2 or 3 people find a spot where they're not being hassled too much, then 2 or 3 more people come. Pretty soon you have what we call homeless encampment. At that point, the neighbors get upset. And sometimes the neighbors are righteous. You know, they're like, hey, somebody stole this pot off my porch with my favorite begonia. Or my kid was out walking and I heard these 2 people screaming at each other. I don't want this for my kid. But a lot of times it's also just pure prejudice where, you know, the worst thing that they think about anybody, those are those people and they live in that place. So they call their elected representatives. And after a certain point, the people, the political people call the cops and say, you know, you got to do something about this. We're getting too many complaints. And they get a 72-hour notice. So they get a piece of paper on the wall or the post and it says you got 3 days. And we go out there and we say, hey, you got this piece of paper saying you got to leave in 3 days. Can we help you? And the vast majority of times they look at me and they say, where can I go? And I cannot answer that. I have no answer. So this is the problem that is really before us and the problem I try to work on. Now I want to just take a little backwards and go, what's the history of this? To let you know, when I was a wee tot, we did not have homelessness like this. This came because Ronald Reagan cut the Housing and Human Development Agency, which used to build low income, used to build housing for poor people. He cut it by 60 to 80%. And nobody, Democrats or Republicans, have really replaced that. So the funding for poor people's housing went down and homelessness went up. And now we have families with kids. We have, I see 80-year-old women on the street. I see people who are fighting cancer, who have very severe disabilities, physical disabilities, and of course, mental disabilities. It is really quite shocking, even for someone with 8 years. I still meet people and go, how can this person still be homeless? Why is our community not gathering around and sweeping them up? So we have shelters that people can go to. A lot of people are too traumatized to really work in these large shelters. They just cannot be with large groups of people who are also traumatized. So one thing that we haven't really moved the needle on is getting more setups where people either live in motels or live in the tiny home village like the Skillicos. Excuse me. So there's a little more acceptance, and Santa Rosa is now talking about setting up safe parking so people who have cars have a place to go at night, at least at night, maybe 24 hours. We're fighting that. And I just want to say that when the fires happened, there was a very stark picture that people who were living under the underpass saw all these fire victims taken into the fairgrounds, fed, given bathroom, given what they needed for the night. And then when that was over, it closed and they were still back out on the street. And that is something we could do tomorrow, is open up the fairgrounds, let all of these 2,000 people, whichever ones they wanted to come, and give them, you know, a place to go to the bathroom is so basic. And people don't even have that. So there's a lot of work to do. It is really complex, fascinating. You get to do policy work, you get to do one-on-one face work, interesting work with people, very complex issues that people have. And I'm saying this because I'm hoping some of you are students and want to think about what you want to do with your life. It's not high paid work, but it is really highly challenging and fascinating. And you will work with some of the most wonderful people in the world, both homeless people and the team that you'll be working with. And finally, I have one piece of optimism. The new $2 trillion stimulus package that's giving us all our $1,400. It includes a $5 billion increase in federal housing vouchers. This is the biggest thing that's happened on the federal level since Ronald Reagan made those cuts. So a housing voucher will give it to someone and say, you find the house and we help you pay for it. You will only have to pay a third of your income, whatever that is. So we'll see how well that gets implemented on the local level, but that could make a very big change for a lot of people. Back to you, Celeste.
When Adrian and I were talking earlier today, we said, let us have a dialogue about housing justice, about the homeless.
Uh-oh.
Issues here. Talk about. We did have a safe parking program that Homeless Action was a part of, and one that I helped start years ago. And it was on private property. It was a former mayor of Santa Rosa actually owned the property, and people could, have a safe place to park at night, or safer, and have what Adrian talks about, that I believe everybody should have access to hygiene stations, or to have access to porta potties and basic essentials like that. Those things were there. And that safe parking program did work for several years, even before Homeless Action became involved and really did a great job as far as working with that. There are now two safe parking programs still in Sonoma County. They are run by churches. One is in, no, there are three. One in Sebastopol and two in Santa Rosa, and that's through coordinated entry. And I welcome the opportunity for us to have more safe parking programs or a larger safe parking program so that people can be stable for a while and have a place to park their vehicles and have a place to park their SUVs, et cetera, because a lot of times these vehicles are in, some of them are in rough condition. Um, so it's just a Band-Aid, but it is something that I think there's advocacy around it. And I joined Adrian in hoping that we can have a larger program, a larger space. And we're going to need help to find the space to do it. Now, because I work and have over the last 25 plus years with different programs, my experience of working with homeless individuals who are they are interested in making some steps toward housing. And there are a lot of steps that go with getting into housing. Um, Generally speaking, most of the programs are behind something called Housing First. It's a model, look it up. Housing First is, get the people in housing and then bring the services on, because housing is going to really help a lot of the basic challenges that people are going to deal with. And I would be remiss to not talk about mental health and mental illness. And my friend Kalia is here, and folks with mental health challenges are really in a tough position, a tough struggle to get housing, maintain housing. The thing is, people can get into housing. I've seen hundreds of people over 25 years plus, whether they're battered women, whether they're SAY teens, or in their families, whether it's individuals who are reunifying with their children. The goal is for people to be able to sustain their housing, to be able to stay in housing once they get it. We have some monies that have been floating around here called rapid rehousing. It helps people pay their deposit, a few months rent, and then it also helps people to pay part of their rent for a period of time. And that works, but sometimes life happens and people have medical situations or they lose their jobs. That's certainly been the case with COVID. People have lost income and people have been impacted by this virus in multiple ways. And if you're already the working poor, and we're talking about housing justice, let's have justice around what minimum wage should look like. Let's have justice about what is a fair wage for people to be earning so that they can have the basic essentials to do some of what they're doing. I'm working with a woman right now who has 5 children. And she just got into housing with one of those vouchers that Adrian talked about, a Section 8 voucher. She found a landlord along with the help of COTS and Interfaith who accepted the voucher, Section 8 voucher. Not all landlords are really that, excited about, will accept them. They are encouraged to. Some like Section 8, some. But this mother got into her own place with her 5 children. And now we're working on helping her to get better transportation through the CROSOC Foundation, which is the G&G Foundation that will help individuals, and it's very competitive, to be able to get a car. And they're very interested in helping her. I got a call today, 2 calls about this woman in the next steps to that program. Now, I believe that everybody deserves a spot somewhere, whether it's in, a safer encampment, whether it's in a tiny house, whether it's in Harold's huts, whether it's in a shelter. Everybody deserves a spot. And that's just a basic need. And so we have to create more spots, more housing, more supports, more mental health support, more outreach support for people who may not be ready for certain steps. So there should be something for them as a safe place for them to be, or a safer place. Now, when we look at some of these encampments, and it breaks my heart. It is like really, and I've walked through several of them as they're ending. And unfortunately, it reaches a point where there's a health issue here. There's a health issue around homelessness, but the encampments sometimes have just completely, uh, you know, not gotten the support that they needed and the resources. And it just, the Dollar Tree, like Joe Rodota, like the encampment on Industrial Way. It was really reached a point that it was really not a safe place for people to be living, or even to just be camping. So we got to get something bigger and more user friendly, because Adrian's absolutely right. Some people, they just cannot be in confined or in shelter programs. Uh, and there are many, or some, who are open to going there because it's a stepping stone.
It works for some people. And one of the issues that comes up at Homeless Action a fair amount is how much agency should we give to homeless people? So there's certainly a thread that says homeless people are just like anybody else. And you give them their own little room with a lock on the door and water and a toilet nearby, and let them worry about their own life, just like all the rest of us do. Let them take charge of their life. Let them get along with their neighbor who, or not. It's up to them. And then there's a lot of then there's experience also that says, well, wait a minute, some people are just dysfunctional. They can't take care of themselves. They don't work well in a community. They don't know how to deal with conflicts that come up, and they really need a lot more um, support, maybe a little supervision, some rules. And Celeste, because you've been doing this for so many years, you've been around a lot of homeless people. How do you think about these kinds of questions?
Good stuff. There's some good stuff in the chat.
Ah,
Um, there's something called supportive services. So it's really essential. And I would like to, you know, open this up for a larger discussion, that we can have more engagement. I'd like to just tap my friend Kalia and see if she is open to saying something about what can we be doing? What else can we be doing in working with homeless individuals?
that's great. And let's get to Jay Dean's question about policy changes too. But
Yes, yes.
yeah, what's your thoughts here?
Thank you so much, both of you. And I want to really go with the flow of the group because I'm just a guest within the room. I've loved the Social Justice Week so much. Do you want to answer the question of the other community member? And then I would love to have a moment to say something. What's preferable?
Why don't you go ahead right now? And then I want to formulate a little something with that, if that's okay.
Okay, thanks. And thank you for just, inviting my voice into the circle. So I am a local peer advocate and system navigator, and I work completely in a trauma-informed way through a trauma-informed lens. I'm also a trauma-informed educator, and I really specialize in serving community members who are chronically unsheltered, also living with very, very high trauma load and mental health challenge. One of my colleagues, Erica Chloe, once called my client set the system heartbreak people that have been circling the larger stakeholder systems of care, often for decades, unable to plug in anywhere. And I'm trying to just be brief. in this extemporaneous moment. And I find myself wanting to give a yin yang balance in just 1 minute. So on one hand, it's my experience with all the clients I've served since I think 2008, I've been in the work, that the underlying issue of chronic homelessness is intersectional disability. So a combination of catastrophic vulnerability that is undergirded by usually severe trauma and includes mental health component, physical health component, and all of the dislocations that happen socially and in family systems with those issues. So it's my experience that even people with those very complex intersectional unmet needs, once their needs begin to be met in an interpersonal stance of equality, dignity, respect, people take up their bed and walk, right? Human beings, when we get our needs met, we get well. That's my own lived experience. I serve from lived experience in the community. I have gnarly, heavy lived experience in multiple ways, and it makes me able to stand in equality with the people that I serve because I are one, right? So that's one thing. So wraparound services, supported housing, absolutely crucial. That's my truth about it after boots on the ground for a decade plus. And then on the other side, I want to speak to the resiliency. So people that end up chronically trapped outside are, my experience is of an orientation to community. Adrienne talked about how our people circle up, right? They family up. That's how people survive on the street. If a guy gets $1, he's going to give half of it to the other homeless guy next to him. Like the level of generosity and resiliency and creativity is large. And I find myself always privileged working with the clients I get to serve who are chronically unsheltered. They're like superheroes, right? And I often say that to them. So I just really wanted to speak also to the intrinsic strength that is within this group of our community members, our neighbors. So big vulnerability, big strength and courage. And I really like to center up the both end of that with our people. So I hope any of that was helpful. There's so much I could say about this, but I'm going to jump right out of the way. Thank you for giving me that little space. I love you both.
Thanks, Kalia. Really appreciate you. Policy change, when we look at an issue, we look at it micro, meso, macro, global. That's a social work formula. And policy is really important. That is why right now it's so important that we protect the right, city council meetings, going to county meetings, going to, Sacramento. There's advocacy that people do by going to Sacramento and lobbying for housing rights, that lobby for more housing, that lobby for protections for people who are being discriminated against, because homeless people are discriminated against. One of the things that has helped is there's something called homeless court. And so homeless people can go to a court specifically for homeless individuals with misdemeanor type crimes, not crimes, but infractions, things like that. And they can get this stuff. They can do community service to pay off some of these fines, which is really a good exchange, because then they can move forward with their lives. If they can get their driver's license back, if they can get they can pay fines, they can get their car registered. So that came about through advocacy, that a specific kind of court needed to be designed, like drug court, for individuals who are dealing with crimes that, some of them are unfair, ticketing people because they're sleeping, because they don't have anywhere to go, is unfair. there are a lot of advocacy groups out there, and Bar High is one of them. And I will put a couple of other groups that are, doing the boots on the ground kind of work, and also partnering with people who've been homeless or unhoused, who now are outreach workers or who are now sitting on advisory boards. It's individuals like that who can really bring, the kind of passion and information to boards, to agencies, to really hear their voices. Adrian, I'm running out of battery. Let me get my extension cord. And let's keep opening this up.
Yeah. So I've been putting a few policy things in the chat, some things to research if you're interested. On the local level, we need people to show up to budget hearings to say we need more money. And I have to say that the cities and counties, Rohnert Park is just considering doing some more than they've been doing. Most things do need some policy trickling, some adjustments. Like if you want to have safe parking, you might need a code adjustment for that. But what really is where the money hits the road is the council have the will to do it because they're going to get backlash, and will they put some money behind it? So that's a really great place for advocacy if you're interested on that level. Questions, thoughts from other people? Yes, Troy. You're muted.
Thank you. First of all, thank you so much for the work that you do. It's just, again, so inspirational. And I think I have a question that might be a little bit too narrow. My experience with homelessness is as an educator. I was at San Francisco State for 23 years, and I watched over the years our students become more and more homeless. And I live up in Novato and would leave very early in the morning to get to work so that I could skip all the traffic. And I used to be the only one in the parking lot at 6:45 in the morning. And before I came to Sonoma State, I would get there at 6:45 in the morning, and the parking lot was full of cars. And they weren't empty cars. And it wasn't just our students who were finding themselves homeless. It was our lecturers who were finding themselves homeless. I mean, we are just not providing a living wage to anybody. So apologize for that. Just a minute. And so, we talked about it a lot. Oh, what are we going to do? A lot of wringing of the hands, but I didn't see any solutions being proposed to support even in our little micro community. And I'm wondering, at Sonoma State, I'm new to Sonoma State, is this an issue for our students here? And I see Caitlin nodding her head. And how, what can we do? And I know, again, I've zeroed in onto a small group, and you guys deal with so much more. But I'm just wondering if you can comment on ways that we can do better.
You are fantastic. And don't ever think it's too small, because I think that's a big place. We have a little group in Sebastopol. We have a little group in Sonoma Valley. I think taking your immediate school community, you can make a difference there. And it encourages all of us and educates all of us. It's part of putting that foundation. So I don't know if anyone here is part of, there has been some research at SSU about student homelessness. I've seen some statistics, and I know there's a pantry, or there was when you all were open. Does anyone here have any more information about what's going on in the SSU community right now? Doesn't seem like it. So we should do some more research and find them, because there have been people, of course, they might have graduated. There's also people at the JC. They now have a sort of informal thing because, hey, you've got bathrooms, you've got showers at the gym. You can do a lot if you can just get the facility managers to, do a program. And maybe people have to sign up for it and get a little placard or something, but you can make a huge difference in people's lives. And I would also say that the other big place you make a difference is when you know people. So when people come to a pantry, you start to, hey, there's Joe. What's up with Joe? And at some point, you find things that are up with Joe. Well, maybe he needs money for books so he can get into classes next year. Some things that are really doable. And that one-on-one, a lot of homeless people have nobody. And just having a buddy to just talk to can make a huge difference. Other people, thoughts?
I put in the chat the links that I'm familiar with, but Lindsay, go ahead.
My question is, how do you recommend spreading, education or challenging the miseducation of just neighborhoods regarding homelessness? I'm on Nextdoor, and I don't know how often I have disgruntled people, with just really not understanding everything that we're talking about right now. And I'm just curious how you might recommend going about that.
Nextdoor,
Well,
I don't know
certainly
what
one
is
of the
one of the worst. It is really a place where people complain. Go on, Celeste.
You're right, but at the same time, there'll be people there who will also say, it's not the homeless people. That didn't happen because some homeless person.
Oh, we're losing Celeste. I'm so
Yeah.
sad.
Was in the neighborhood.
Come on, come back to us, Celeste. Come on.
It's because
Oh,
Sometimes if the visible screen gets shut off, the audio will get stronger.
oh, that's a good point. Celeste, if you can hear me, can you stop your video? Because we're not catching your voice. I don't even know if she can hear us now. Well, we just got about 3 minutes here before you all.
am I muted?
No, you're in and out. Your internet is in and out.
Are you able to turn off your screen? That might help.
I did.
It looks like we've lost her. Adrienne, is there anything that you could add to that?
I forgot where we were in the conversation. I'm seeing a lot of good stuff in the chat, a lot of good ideas. And, my experience is if you start with a small group of people that like each other, you will come up with creative solutions for a lot of things. And also then you build that community that can go to this Rohnert Park City Council or can go to the SSU administration, and you've got your team that's pretty well educated and can respond to whatever roadblocks that are in front of you. It's huge problem on the campuses. The statistics at the JC are just, again, mind-blowing. And it's awesome that people who don't have a house still want to go to school. You would think as a community, that is something we would support wholeheartedly, because that's not easy. Doing your homework in a car is, or trying to work in the library all the time, it's tough. So these are some of the heroes that are going to build our nation. And Celeste, can we hear you now?
And I wanted to pop in a solution thing, if that's okay.
Sure.
So the primary route into supported housing in Sonoma County for our chronically homeless neighbors who live with mental health challenge is through Sonoma County Behavioral Health. That is the doorway in. And so one of the things that citizens can be doing, community members can be doing, is just keeping the pressure through letters and going to the board meetings of the Board of Supervisors on keeping behavioral health department funded, because the Sonoma County Behavioral Health Department was discovered to be secretly bankrupt in January of 2018 and lost 75% of its operating budget, which blew up our homeless population, like doubled it. And Measure O has backfilled a little of that, but that's a really simple thing you can do, because the resources through that conduit are the best and the quickest in the county for supported housing. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. That's really important. And I want to make a little bow to the peer recovery movement. If you're not familiar with that, do that Googling thing. It gives hope to people who have chronic and severe mental illness, and teaches all of us that it's not the end of the world, and you can recover and you can have a life. And it's another place for peer people. You know, we talk about empowering homeless people. We all need to empower each other and work together. It's just, you know, I'm 71 years old, and I just see this more and more and more, that yeah, we need money, and yeah, we need authorities, and we need experts and research, and but the biggest thing we need really is each other. And in all cases, that makes a huge difference. So it is 3:20. Jamila, do you want to do some wrap up here, or?
Could I just ask a question?
Sure.
About, I think it was Celeste who mentioned just before the problem with connecting, or it might have been you, Adrian, about, let's just say, being at a pantry and you become acquainted with an individual and you start asking questions to yourself, and then discover that a person might need books. And I think right there, to me, in my own, internal, creating a story about something just as you described it, it's like that's where the ball can drop. It's like, will that person who has those questions and has the familiarity with that person know about that book program, know what the book program is, know how to make that connection? And I think because a lot of best intentions can get dimmed because the link of, oh, that's so wonderful to know, and once you know it, it's yours, and you can't give that to somebody when you see the need, because you don't know what to give them in terms of, or give yourself to make that happen, that connection. And I link it with what you just said, Adrian, about we need one another, and that sense of permeability of, that sense of, with hesitation to dial the phone because you don't know what department to ask for, et cetera, et cetera. And that delays the health of that connection that would otherwise happen.
Yes, that's a good point. And that's why, you have resource lists and that kind of thing. But I went to one expert once who said, if you have someone in your life who's willing to go do the hard thing, make that first phone call, that is pretty much all you need. You need someone to talk to and be honest with, and then you need that person who will, because it probably all of once you make that phone call, maybe you get 3 more phone calls you have to make,
Right.
But at some point there's a solution at the end of those calls and at the other end of the line.
So there's a generic resource list on a particular website. I mean, in terms of getting books for students.
If you go to homelessaction.net, we
Okay.
have local resources there, and a lot of those will connect you with other resources.
Okay, that's good to know.
Celeste, you're back. Or did she just disappear again?
I have a quick request for whoever it was who changed my name. I think I need you to put Christine Batanti, which is what it's supposed to be. I'm concerned that the next time I go to use Zoom, I'm not going to be able to change back to my full name. Is that possible?
Sure, just type that into the chat for me and I'll change it for you.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
I so much appreciate you, Lindsay, and you, Jamila, for all your support. Any other last words here? I don't want to hold you up too long. It used to be people had to go to class, and so you need 10 minutes to between classes. But we still need these 10-minute breaks, don't we?
Yeah.
All right. So I just want to thank you all and appreciate you. Yes, Chris. You're muted, Chris.
Good, yes. I was going to ask a question
Okay.
related to conservatorship in this county. I was a clinical social worker for 40 years, much of that time in community mental health in other counties. And I noticed an erosion of the use of conservatorship. And I'm wondering, is there any effort to really look at people who are not able to care for themselves, will likely never be able to care for themselves, who are living in deplorable condition? I mean, literally walking the streets in rags. I live downtown and I see this and I'm going, whatever happened to compassionate, approach to really taking over when someone can't care for themselves? Curious about this county's
So Christine, can I ask you a
approach.
question? When you say eroded, do you feel like there's less money to pay the people who do the conservatorships? Or
The
what's
county, I
eroded?
know that the county I came from stopped doing it because they didn't want to be responsible
I see.
for the individual they were putting on conservatorship.
I see.
And immediately you just saw this flood of people who would have, while I was still working, been deemed unable to care for themselves, gravely disabled.
Yeah.
And would have been conserved and put in either a facility or something. And that
Yeah.
was Stanislaus County, and they just stopped.
Yeah, and Chris, Kalia makes a point in the chat that this is really complicated because when you serve someone, you take away a lot of their agency.
Mhm.
And legal rights.
Yeah, and legal rights.
But
And
if
so-
they have no ability to exercise that agency,
yeah, and I
I'm
think,
not talking about the many people that you see that have problems,
yeah, I'm just saying that it's probably too much for us to take on in the last 2 minutes
Okay.
we have. But I hear you, and I think that as a whole, government not being willing to take care of its citizens and take responsibility for taking care of them is a bottom line problem here. And it
Mhm.
shows up in various places.
Right.
I'm still hoping Celeste is going to be back with us to make a final comment. We got her picture now, which is good. Celeste, you're muted. Oh,
I have thank you all for being here.
I think that was a thank you. And I want to echo that and appreciate all of you and your interest in the topic. And, I'll see you on the street.
Oh.
Thank you all. In order to keep our funding, we collect some information and give it to the school that funds us so we can keep doing this event. And if you could fill out our evaluation form so we can keep improving the event and giving some information to the school, we would greatly appreciate it. That is in the chat and it's at our website /survey.
Yeah, thank you. I will definitely do that.
Yeah, you've been here 4 years?
I think so.
Yeah.
It's been a while. I love coming back here. And I just can't wait to do it in person.
Regular. You're our pinch
Cool.
hitter, sports metaphor. I'm not really sure. Your starting lineup.
There you go.
There you go.
Oh yeah, I moved up to the bigs.
Yeah.
It's just so important, social justice on all these levels. And I know all of it, all these issues completely overlap. So thanks. Thank you. Thanks to the organizer, Garth.
Thank you.
Bye.